Coming up on Theater Talk.
Writers can be forgiving when you sell a book to the movies or something, but you mustn't mention that you're doing any acting, you know, because there's suddenly this quiet settles over the room.
Why is
Other writers do not want you to be an actor.
Everybody's so
jealous.
jealous.
Oh yeah, why him?
Why him?
Like, I'm better looking, you know.
I know. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the CUNY TV Foundation. From New York City, this is Theater Talk. I'm the producer, Susan Haskins.
And I'm Michael Riedel of the New York Post. Susan and I have been reading an absolutely terrific memoir, Lucky Bruce, a literary memoir by Bruce Jay Friedman, which really captures the New York literary world in the 1960s and 70s and into the 80s. Bruce Jay Friedman is the author of the celebrated plays Scuba Duba, Steambath, two of my favorite novels, Stern and A Mother's Kisses, and many screenplays, including Stir Crazy and Splash, and a terrific collection of short stories. And we're very delighted to have with us tonight Bruce Jay Friedman. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Really have enjoyed this this book, Bruce. You evoke so many wonderful writers of that era. And one person I wanted to begin with, because you have tremendous affection for him, and I knew so little about him, but you make him such a fascinating character, is your close friend Mario Puzo, who wrote The Godfather. And he really is, he's just a larger-than-life character throughout this book. Can you tell us how you got to know Mario Puzo? Because you guys worked before you were famous, you knew each other.
1960, I was editor of 4 adventure magazines, Male, Men, and my favorite, True Action, as opposed to False Action. But I had a job opening, and I hired Mario. I had read a book of his, The Dark Arena, which really didn't have the narrative forward motion that he developed, which he claims he learned at the adventure magazines. The other candidate was Arthur Kretschmer, who became the editor of Playboy for many years and never forgave me for hiring Mario. So Mario went to work and wrote, you know, 10 million words, you know, for us.
He was very prolific, Mario. Was just...
Yeah, in 1963, he approached me very sheepishly. We were all moonlighting, but we did our jobs diligently, and then we were serious writers late at night. He said he was thinking of, he was writing a novel, he was thinking of calling it The Godfather, and what did I think of the title? And I said, well, not very much, frankly, Mario. I take another whack at it, really. It sounds domestic. Who's going to read that, you know? Go back and... So he just gave me a look that you don't want to see, a look of steel. He's a little, you know, fat man, always denied any connection with the mafia, but if you saw that look... and then, you know, then the book broke,
Did you read The Godfather before it got published? Did you read second?
No, but there was a fellow in our office named Garfinkel. He kept changing his name from Gar to Garfinkel. I don't know what he was then, but he came bursting into the office and said, I've just read the first 80 pages of the most riveting book. It's like a runaway train, you know. And that's the first contact I had with it. He wrote about 12 Godfathers for us, for our adventure magazines.
Oh, really? But books about the mafia? And...
No, they were, yeah, a little bit. No, they were on other subjects, but they were, you know, they had quality. At 30,000 words, we had something called a book bonus. Oh. And he would knock them off, sometimes it seemed overnight.
Wow.
So we remained friends to the end.
Was Godfather before or after you wrote Stern, which was your book?
I had written
novel?
Stern.
Yeah.
So you were the first of all you guys in the magazine world to kind of break through, wanting to be the novelist? You were
yeah, it was sort of mystifying. What was I doing there, you know?
Still doing this job.
Gloria Steinem, for example, was poking around at the time, wondering what this was, you know, how we could do these schlock magazines, quality schlock, and also be serious
Well, you were
writers.
supporting a family of 4, right? You make much of, you were, yeah.
Yeah, right, right.
So Stern, they said, was heralded as the first Freudian novel, or what was it that they said about it that you wrote it, and then that you told you had the greatest analysis of a Freudian character?
Well, yeah, there was a celebrated psychiatrist who knocked on my door in Great Neck with tears in his eyes. You know, he was a pilgrimage, and he said, "Your analysis of the male pregnancy fantasy is extraordinary. No one has ever written, you know, with such depth." And I didn't know what he was talking about, actually. I had absolutely no idea of what he was saying. I read a little Kraft Ebbing, you know, for the naughty parts. But no, I had no background, but it was a big hit with, the book was a big hit with psychiatrists. Some had patients who would slam the book down and say, "This is how I feel," in this book.
And now, since this is Theater Talk, I want to run by you this wonderful quote. You said, "I've yet to have a literary experience more thrilling than sitting in a theater and having a live audience react favorably to a piece that I'd written."
Oh yeah, I still feel there's nothing to compare. I've had the other experience too.
Yeah.
Turtlenecks.
But now this was for Scuba Duba.
Yeah.
Which you sort of you say in your book that you were influenced by the absurdist writers, that you were influenced very much by Jack Gelber, who wasn't an absurdist writer, but was a writer who wasn't understood until Kenneth Tynan explained it.
Yeah.
It was all, yeah.
Yeah, he had a flop, and Tynan came over and turned it into a hit.
So then what put you into writing Scuba Duba? Tell us about that time.
Well, I was a novelist and a story writer, and the theater I knew was, you know, the well-made play. Yeah. And something happened in the early 60s. It was off-Broadway. And
Edward Albee and
Arthur Kopit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jack Gelber and Machinal, I remember. And this was all terribly exciting to me, to see theater turned upside down, you know. And then I was in Europe and thought, well, I'd take a shot at it, you know. And I wrote this play very quickly, not realizing, you know, it would take 2 years of aggravation to finally get it mounted.
So it was like an impulse play, kind of, in that sense.
Something, I wanted to get in on that, you know.
You wanted to be part of that world.
Off-Broadway, what I was seeing. I remember Garson Kanin had a long Hollywood career and a Broadway career, and suddenly I'm a member of the Screen Actors Guild. Oh, not Screen Actors, whatever the playwrights group is.
Right, screenwriter.
Oh, Dramatist Guild, the Dramatist Guild.
Yeah. He turned to me and he said, "Now, Mr. Friedman will explain to us, you know, what the off-Broadway theater is all about." I mean, it was really acid coming out of his mouth. You know? They were so contemptuous.
That the old guard of Broadway, of all you young people doing this experimental kind of stuff.
I just wanted to get in on that, and I thought, here I have one evening, and one fellow who's having, his wife has run off with a black scuba diver, and what's that gonna be like, you know? It's just, well, I'm saying simple as that, but it was sort of rough getting it on, you know, and then big surprise that it took off.
Was a big hit.
And you found Jerry Orbach, no small matter.
Do you think that time that you spent at that magazine company where you were having to churn out these stories all the time, is that, I know, you know, it's high-end schlock that you were doing, but is that really where you learned the craft of writing, the discipline of writing? Do you think that was the best kind of writer's workshop you could go to, was a magazine where you had to churn out this stuff on a regular basis?
Really, I didn't do much writing for those magazines. I figured out that the way to do this was to hire very smart people, good, you know, the smarter they were, the easier my job would be. So my job was sort of administrative. If I was writing for those magazines, or for Time, or Newsweek, where I couldn't get a job, I wouldn't have been able to write those novels because I was able to separate the two functions. One was, again, was administrative, telling people what to write.
Yeah.
And then I could, you know, take the train back to, you know, and close myself off and use the other part of my head, or however you want to put it.
So that was a blessing in a way that you didn't get hired by Time.
That I couldn't get a job,
Right.
except with this company.
You had the success with Scuba Duba and Steambath, and you wrote another play that you came on Theater Talk years ago for, Have You Spoken to Any Jews Lately? But you didn't do much, you didn't do many plays after that.
Well, in Yiddish we have an expression which is Oliver Schul, let it rest in peace. I did do a play, well, it was Turtlenecks, you mentioned
Right, yes,
before.
yeah.
And that should have been done off-Broadway in a modest way. And David Merrick came into the picture and wanted to do it as a big Broadway play. So he opened it at the Fisher. Notice I have an excuse for anything that didn't work.
Well, of course.
It's never my play.
No, of course, somebody else.
But he opened it at the Fisher Theater in Detroit, 2,000 seats, and this little postage stamp of a play with Tony Curtis, who, I'm not saying this out of school, was stoned through the whole experience, you know. He writes about it, or, you know, he said so in interviews.
Yeah.
I didn't pick up on this, you know. I know he's always in a cold sweat. So, no, that one didn't work out too well.
And then you
Yet.
But you didn't spend all that much time in your life in the theater. I mean, you consider yourself first and foremost a novelist. That's where your heart is.
Yeah, but I keep, you know, showing up. I'm not finished yet, you know. I mean,
Well, you did have that slight distraction of becoming one of the most successful screenwriters ever.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
hated
mean, you did-
hearing that. Yeah,
Yeah, well, but
that's the last thing I
what was
wanted.
it Puzo said about the screenwriters?
Oh yeah, there isn't a producer in Hollywood who doesn't feel he could write this screenplay if only he had
Yeah,
the
time.
time.
You have the time.
For one thing.
But how did that come up that you you got into the Hollywood game and then started you know writing these things?
Well, it was sort of traditional, I guess. If you'd caused a little commotion here in Manhattan, they would somebody would like Ray Stark, for example, produced Funny Girl, would call you out there. That's just the way it worked, and being curious, and so off I went. But I'd always come back, you know. I never liked that work. I loved Hollywood. I still love Hollywood.
I know, you write very, how much you enjoy just being around the pool, the Beverly Hills Hotel,
yeah.
and all that stuff.
And I'd be offended when somebody asked me to actually write a few scenes. You know.
When you could be playing tennis or swimming.
Yeah, call me. I'd have to leave the tennis court. It was just, well, it's the only. Maybe it's different, obviously, with Woody Allen, who gets his movies made. But it's the only kind of writing I know that's being shot down as you do it. you know. So what kind of writing is that? I mean, you know it's going to be change, and you know they'll call in the next hack, or De Niro's people will come in. Puzo wrote the Cotton Club.
Yes.
And was paid $1 million when that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he's credited, and there isn't a single word of dialogue in the Cotton Club that he actually wrote. He did something called the architecture, for, you know.
Right.
So I think the reason I stopped was there's that thing about pride of authorship that you just don't get, you know, or very few people do in the films. It's ridiculously collaborative, and I'm not such a good collaborator.
That's why you're a novelist at heart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you working on a novel now?
No, I'm working on short fiction for at least one collection, maybe two collections. No, I don't. I don't really have a book, a novel I want to write that could change tomorrow.
Yeah.
I might take another shot at writing a play.
Really?
There are actually two of them. Both of them need work.
2 plays?
Yeah, yeah, that I might go back to, or I might throw them out and start over again with the same, idea.
Do you still write as prodigiously as you, well, I mean, it's so impressive, you detail in this book how, in spite of your being an editor, then going on, you had a family, you had a divorce, you complain of being the lonely guy, but you seem to have a lot of women, and you're having a good time, and yet your output of writing is remarkable. That you seem to, you were so disciplined in getting it out.
Hasn't really stopped,
Yeah.
particularly. I had this injury that takes up some time, but I seem to. That's my anchor, and I don't feel comfortable with myself unless I'm working on something, working on a story
Something, yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to ask him about Elaine's.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah.
We got to wrap it up, but we can't leave you. We can't leave without you just.
Oh my! Did all that?
But no,
time ago?
because you were one of the first.
We can't let you
people
go
to
without
hang
telling
out-
us about Elaine's, because you were one of the founding members of Elaine's, the great literary. I was going to say watering hole, but I know she hated it having been called a watering hole.
Yeah, she'd say.
Yeah. Yeah.
What kind of watering? Why do they call it a watering hole?
I don't know.
Pissed off. It's a restaurant.
But you described this great time you had there.
Yeah, I was Jack Richardson, who was going to be the hope of the American theater at one point.
Yeah.
A wonderful writer, but he had two flops, two plays that opened and closed quickly and never wrote again. But he's the one who brought me in there in 1963 or 4, and I needed a place to go. I had a marriage that was breaking up like an ice flow, and I just needed a place to go, and that was it. That when I walked in there, I felt very comfortable. She had a way of making you feel comfortable, and it was just a little nest of playwrights and writers back then. The producers hadn't discovered it.
Yeah, and again, I'm so impressed at how you all could go to Elaine's, get drunk, and yet still maintain your writing.
Yeah,
Pretty
well,
amazing.
we were, young and foolish.
One of the people you hung out with was Joseph Heller. You had a lot to say about him, and I was just very interested. It seemed like a very troubled person.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, he said to me out of nowhere, we got to know each other we'd met earlier, but we got to know each other when we were living in the Hampton area.
Yeah.
And he said, at least you had fun. Meaning you've sold out.
You got to hang out in Hollywood.
Given up. You're no longer a serious person, but at least you had fun. Joe is always late to have fun,
What did you think of Catch-22 as a novel?
Well, the one I liked was the one
Yes.
he preferred, actually. What was it?
Something happened.
Something happened.
Yeah.
I think is really has no right to be a masterpiece, but it is a masterpiece.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Well, it's one long kvetch is really what it is.
Yeah.
Brilliant kvetch for 500
Right.
pages. But just try it, I thought that it didn't tower above Catch-22. It was my preference, actually.
But you seem to describe him as sort of that his life is one long fetch in the incidents that you...
Yeah, but boy, do I miss him.
Really?
Really do. We got very friendly in the late days.
I mean, one of the poignant thing in your memoir is all these people you write about who were your good friends, they're all gone now. I mean, you've outlived a lot of the Elaine's crowd.
Well, it's early now. I haven't made it home yet.
But you describe, because I was pondering that, and you describe, I mean, who knows, what happens, but you describe a sort of healthier lifestyle. You always got your tennis in, right? I mean, there's this, and also, and as shown in the title of your book, Lucky Bruce, you seem to have a very positive attitude through it all and a sense of appreciation. I mean, why do you call the book Lucky Bruce?
Well, I don't know if it's such a good idea because, you know, I was sort of invoking the wrath of the gods. I started to get unlucky the second the book was published.
Oh, is that when, because you had the accident? Was that?
Yeah, I had some problems with my health after, as soon as the book came out. We'll show them.
Oh, we'll show them, yeah. But there always is this sense of, that throughout the book, and it gets this wonderful, you know, you tell these wonderful stories about everybody, that there's this wonderful sense of your appreciation. I mean, you're so talented, and yet you appreciate that you were so fortunate at the same time, you know, that many are called, but few are chosen, and you were chosen. None
of this was scripted. I, you know, just went from one. Well, it was just all fun to me. I mean, I forget the vomiting and everything that goes with it.
And we would be remiss not to mention your second wife, and you write a love story there about your relationship with her.
Yeah, I'm like batting 500 in marriages, but that's not bad, you know.
No.
And you're a screen actor.
Oh, if you want to call it acting, yeah.
Yes. Do you still get recognized from husbands and wives?
Well, I drove up to the Beverly Hills Hotel once, I remember, and a woman ran up to me and said, "Oh, I really do admire your work, Mr. Friedman." I said, "Well, would you read one of my books or something?" He said, "No, I'm talking about your acting." It was absurd.
That's what happens when you go to Hollywood, Bruce.
Yeah. She didn't know I was a writer.
That's awesome.
I did any writing.
All right, the memoir is called Lucky Bruce, a literary memoir by Bruce Jay Friedman. A really terrific read, evokes a time lost, I'm afraid, in New York City.
I was going to ask you about Woody Allen, but I didn't get to that. We'll end the show.
Well, ask him quickly about Woody Allen.
No, did you hang out with him?
At Elaine's?
No, not especially. I think he saw me being carried out of the restaurant and thought I'd be good to.
Then that's how you got there.
To play a drunk or something. No, I don't. Not especially. I don't know if we have time quickly.
No, go ahead.
I've asked about what he's like as what is he like as a director, and so the little I know, it's not acting, but whatever he asked me to do, I did. And he said, "I don't know, it's just really extraordinary what you just did. It's absolute perfection. Never seen anything like it. But if you could do it one more time, you know, just one more time, just like that." And you do it again, and it's the same thing. You wind up doing 17 different, you know, takes. In other words, he gets what he wants.
And he sort of nudges a modification.
Yeah.
And were you changing the performance each time you were doing it, or were you just...
Well, thanks for dignifying it by calling it a performance. I was just hanging out. It would seem... I think I have that in the book, that writers can be forgiving when you sell a book to the movies or something. But you mustn't mention that you're doing any acting, you know, because there's suddenly... this quiet settles over the room.
Why is
Other writers do not want you to be an actor.
Well, and everybody's so jealous.
Else. Pardon?
Everybody's so jealous.
Oh yeah, why him?
Why him?
Like, I'm better looking, you know.
I know.
Was Norman Mailer jealous of you that you were acting?
For all I know.
We would be remiss now. We're about to close, but I have to ask you about pissing next to Muhammad Ali. What's the story there?
Well, I was at Chasen's, and I used the urinal, looked up, the guy next to me is Muhammad Ali, my great hero. Yeah. And I began to chant the way people used to do at Madison Square Garden. "Ali, you are the greatest, you are Ali, there's never been anybody like you, you know." And he listened to this, and he said, "Who are you, brother?" I said, "It's not important, I'm not important, it's you, Ali." So I went running out. My wife, Patty, was waiting at the table. What happened? I said, I told her what happened. She said, "Did you at least let the man, you know, take a leak, you know?" It's a better line. She had a better line than that, but...
What was the line?
I don't know, some variation of that. Did you at least let him, you know, do what he was supposed to do?
Is he of all of the great writers, the great actors that you've met, was Ali the one that you were really starstruck by?
Yeah, pretty much. now that I think of it. Well, athletes do things that I can't even aspire to do. Whereas as you move along, you know, you meet writers and figure, well, I can't do what he can do, but he can't do what I can do, you know.
Right.
But Ali.
That's right. Okay, the book is called Lucky Bruce, a literary memoir by Bruce Jay Friedman. Terrific, terrific book. We've enjoyed it very, very much. And thanks for being a charming guest on Theater Talk.
Oh, yeah.
And if those two plays work out, we'd love to have you on to talk about them.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'll go right to work.
Or we'll revive, we could revive Scuba Duba.
That's right. Yeah. Has there ever been a revival of Scuba Duba?
San Francisco, and the Times caught up with it, but Steambath has always been.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scuba Duba, no. No, it would be, I'm not even sure I'd want to, you know, see it right, now. You know.
Okay. All right, Bruce Jay Friedman, thanks for being our guest tonight.
No, thanks for making me relaxed. You know.
Anytime. You can sign up for viewer updates at theatertalk.org.
Or you can Twitter us. Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production.
Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Lowe Foundation, the Eleanor Naylor Dana Charitable Trust, the Alan S. Gordon Foundation, the Corey and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy Strelson Foundation, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, and the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.